The Wizard of Oz, 1939, remains one of the most iconic and enchanting films ever created, a timeless journey, filled with wonder, courage, and unforgettable characters that have inspired generations. In this video, we look back at the legendary cast who brought the magical world of Oz to life and pay tribute to the actors who have sadly passed away. From their memorable performances to the profound impact they left on cinema history, we honor their contributions and celebrate the legacy they helped build. Join us as we remember the stars who made The Wizard of Oz an everlasting classic in the hearts of audiences around the world. Judy Garland, born June 10, 1922, immortalized the character of Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, at the tender age of 17, delivering a performance that became the emotional anchor of the 20th century. While she remains the face of the film, her financial compensation was startlingly low compared to her male co-stars. She earned approximately $500 per week, a figure that, while holding the purchasing power of roughly $11,000 today, was a fraction of what the Scarecrow and Tin Man earned. This salary was hardly enough to compensate for the theft of her childhood, as most of her earnings were siphoned off by agents, and her controlling mother leaving her with little autonomy to purchase even basic freedoms. Her life was a tragic tapestry of medical abuse sanctioned by the studio system. To keep her thin and energized for 18-hour workdays, she was force-fed a cocktail of amphetamines, pep pills, and then sedated with barbiturates to sleep a chemical roller coaster that permanently wrecked her metabolism and induced lifelong insomnia. She suffered from deep-seated body dysmorphia, fueled by executives who called her a fat little pig, forcing her into restrictive corsets that caused physical bruising and restricted her breathing during musical numbers. The toxicity of this regimen culminated in her untimely death on June 22, 1969, in Chelsea, London, at the age of 47, due to an accidental overdose of barbiturates that stopped her tired heart. She was eventually laid to rest at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles. Fun fact: during the filming of Over the Rainbow, the director originally wanted to cut the song for slowing down the pace. Yet that very sequence became her defining legacy, symbolizing the eternal hope that outlived her tragic reality. From the tragic songbird now to the humbug magician, a veteran star with a hidden bottle. Frank Morgan, born June 1, 1890, masterfully portrayed Professor Marvel the Wizard and three other minor characters in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, at the age of 49, bringing a vaudevillian charm to the fraudulent ruler of the Emerald City. A highly established character actor, Morgan commanded a salary significantly higher than Garland's, earning roughly $2,500 per week, which in the pre-war economy was an astronomical sum equivalent to nearly $55,000 today wealth that allowed him to maintain a lavish lifestyle, a yacht, and a sprawling ranch, insulating him from the Great Depression's sting. However, his jovial on-screen persona masked a severe and debilitating battle with alcoholism that was an open secret in Hollywood. He was known to carry a briefcase fully stocked with liquor to the set, blending his drinking into his befuddled acting style, until it began to erode his physical health. The physical toll of the wizard makeup and the intense heat of the early Technicolor lighting rigs, which often raised set temperatures to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, put immense strain on his cardiovascular system, which was already weakened by years of heavy drinking. He did not live to see the film become a television staple, passing away on September 18, 1949 in Beverly Hills, at the age of 59, from a sudden heart attack in his sleep, cutting short a career that was just transitioning to television. He was laid to rest at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. Fun fact: in a moment of bizarre serendipity, the costume department bought a tattered Prince Albert coat from a second-hand store for his character, and upon checking the inner pocket, they discovered it had been tailored for and owned by L. Frank Baum, the author of the original Oz books. From the man behind the curtain now to the loose-limbed straw man, the last one standing who bore the scars of the cornfield. Ray Bolger, born January 10, 1904, danced into cinematic history as the Hunk and the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz in 1939. At the age of 35, utilizing his unique rubber-legged dance style to create a character that defied gravity. He fought hard for the role, originally being cast as the Tin Man, and his star power secured him a salary of roughly $3,000 per week, a princely sum that afforded him significant real estate investments and a level of financial security that allowed him to be selective with future roles, effectively setting him up for life in an era where a family home cost $4,000. Yet the role was a physical torture chamber. The Scarecrow mask was a prosthetic rubber bag glued to his face that completely blocked his pores, and under the searing studio lights required for Technicolor, his skin could not breathe, causing him to verge on heat stroke and asphyxiation daily. When the mask was finally removed after filming it, left permanent deep lines around his mouth and chin scars he called his honorary stripes, and the burlap costume constantly chafed his skin raw, leaving him prone to infection. He outlived the entire main cast, passing away on January 15, 1987, in Los Angeles, at the age of 83, from bladder cancer, having spent his final years as the last living link to the land of Oz. He was laid to rest at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. Fun fact, Bolger was the only cast member who believed the film was a flop upon release because it lost money for MGM initially. Yet his wobbly-legged walk down the yellow brick road is now studied by physical comedians worldwide as the gold standard of movement. From the loose-limbed straw man now to the king of beasts, a comedic genius trapped in a suit of torture. Bert Lahr, born August 13, 1895, roared into cinema history as Zeke and the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz in 1939 at the age of 44, bringing a vaudevillian vibrato to the screen that masked a man deeply plagued by insecurity. Already a Broadway titan, Lahr commanded a salary of $2,500 per week, a staggering sum during the Great Depression that offered the purchasing power of over $55,000 today. This income allowed him to support a high-maintenance lifestyle and a large family, yet he was notoriously frugal, often consumed by the terrifying, irrational fear that his wealth would vanish overnight. His physical suffering on set was arguably the most severe of the cast. His costume was constructed from real African lion pelts and weighed nearly 90 pounds, essentially forcing him to carry a teenage human on his shoulders for 12 hours a day. Under the intense Technicolor lights, the temperature inside the suit soared to over 100 degrees Celsius, causing him to sweat so profusely that the costume had to be industrially dried every night to prevent it from rotting, and he suffered from chronic heat exhaustion and breathing difficulties that required constant medical monitoring on set. He died on December 4, 1967, in New York City at the age of 72 due to pneumonia complicating a massive hemorrhage from undiagnosed cancer. He was laid to rest at Union Field Cemetery in Queens. Fun fact, Lahr was a chronic worrier who demanded retakes even when scenes were perfect, yet his ad-libbed snagglepuss voice became so iconic that it remains the default lion voice in animation to this day. From the anxiety-ridden lion now to the heartless metal man. A role that nearly blinded his predecessor and scarred his own eyes. Jack Haley, born August 10, 1897, stepped into the rigid casing of Hickory and the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, at the age of 42, taking over the role after the original actor Buddy Ebsen was hospitalized by the makeup. Haley negotiated a lucrative salary of roughly $3,000 per week, an elite income that secured him a life of immense privilege, allowing him to purchase prime California real estate that would eventually balloon his estate into the millions, far outstripping the earnings of the film itself. However, The role was a medical nightmare. Although the makeup department switched from the aluminum powder that coated Ebsen's lungs to an aluminum paste for Haley, the paste still caused a severe agonizing eye infection that nearly blinded him, requiring him to shoot scenes in total darkness to rest his corneas between takes. Furthermore, his costume was so rigid that he literally could not sit down. He was forced to rest against a slant board, a reclined plank between takes to relieve the pressure on his spine and legs, which often went numb from the constriction of the tin buckram suit. He died on June 6, 1979, in Los Angeles at the age of 81, from a heart attack, having outlived the rest of the male trio. He was laid to rest at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. Fun fact, in a twist of Hollywood fate, Haley's son, Jack Haley Jr., later married Judy Garland's daughter, Liza Minnelli, legally uniting the Tin Man and Dorothy's families decades after the film wrapped. From the rusted woodsman now to the bubble-floating benevolence, a widow working off a fortune in debt. Billie Burke, born August 7th of 1884, descended from the sky as Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, at the age of 55, projecting an ethereal calm that hid a chaotic financial reality. Unlike her co-stars who were building fortunes, Burke was desperately working to rebuild one. Following the death of her husband, the legendary impresario Florenz Ziegfeld, she was left with debts equivalent to millions in today's currency, forcing her to accept the role for a flat fee of roughly $3,000 per week, simply to pay off creditors and maintain her home. While she appeared ageless on screen, she was suffering from the silent, crushing stress of single-handedly managing the fallout of the stock market crash, which had decimated her family's wealth, all while maintaining the facade of a scatterbrained society matron. The physical toll of her role was subtle, but punishing. Her massive, sparkling gown was incredibly heavy and corseted to create the silhouette of a younger woman, causing her severe back strain and bruising around the ribs, while the high-altitude wirework required for her bubble entrance triggered acute vertigo that she professionally suppressed. She died on May 14, 1970, in Los Angeles, at the age of 85, from natural causes exacerbated by dementia. She was laid to rest at Kensico Cemetery in Valhalla, New York. Fun fact, Burke was 54 years old when she played Glinda, 18 years older than Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch. Yet her unique warbling voice and soft focus lighting convinced the world she was the youthful counterpart to the crone. From the bubble-floating benevolence now to the cackling green menace, a gentle soul literally set aflame by the studio. Margaret Hamilton, born December 9, 1902, terrified generations as Miss Gulch and the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, at the age of 36, delivering a performance so frightening that her scenes were heavily cut to prevent children from fainting. Despite her villainous iconicity, she earned a reduced rate of $1,000 per week, a sum that, while holding the purchasing power of roughly $22,000 today, was a fraction of the Scarecrow's pay, and only guaranteed for a few weeks of work, leaving her to hustle for other roles to maintain her livelihood in a male-dominated industry. Her commitment to the role nearly cost her her life in a horrific on-set accident. During her fiery exit from Munchkinland, the trap-door mechanism failed to drop her fast enough, and the pyrotechnic blast ignited her broom and hat. She suffered severe second-degree burns on her face and agonizing third-degree burns on her hand, requiring her to recuperate in a hospital for weeks, where the dead skin had to be painfully debrided. To add insult to injury, she was forced to return to the set before her hand had fully healed, wearing green gloves to hide the raw, weeping flesh, because the copper-based green makeup was toxic and would have poisoned her blood if applied directly to the wounds. She died on May 16, 1985 in Salisbury, Connecticut, at the age of 82, following a heart attack, brought on by Alzheimer's disease. She was cremated, and her ashes were scattered in Amenia, New York. Fun fact, before Hollywood, Hamilton was a compassionate kindergarten teacher who loved children, and she spent the rest of her life trying to convince terrified kids she met in public that she wasn't actually a witch. From the terrifying witch now to the Kansas patriarch, an authoritarian farmer with a golden touch. Charlie Grapewin, born December 20th, 1869, grounded the fantasy as Uncle Henry in The Wizard of Oz in 1939 at the seasoned age of 70, bringing a gritty Dust Bowl realism to the sepia-toned Kansas sequences. As one of the oldest and most experienced actors on the lot, his salary was a respectable $750 per week, a solid upper-middle-class income for the Depression era that allowed him to maintain a comfortable lifestyle in California, insulating him from the economic despair his character portrayed. Unlike many of his peers who squandered their wealth, Grapewin was a shrewd financial mind. Decades prior, he had invested heavily in General Motors stock before the boom, a move that gave him a level of financial independence rare for character actors, meaning he acted for the love of the craft rather than mere survival. However, his final years were marred by the creeping frailty of advanced age. He suffered from chronic respiratory issues exacerbated by decades of smoking and the dusty conditions of studio backlots, which slowly diminished his capacity to work. He died on February 1956 in Corona, California, at the age of 86, from natural causes, passing away peacefully in his home rather than a hospital. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, alongside Hollywood royalty. Fun fact, Grapewin began his career as a circus aerialist and trapeze artist in the late 19th century, a physically demanding past that gave him the stamina to continue acting well into his 70s, when most men of his generation had long retired. From the weathered farmer now to the strict matriarch, a tragic finale that mirrored the darkness of the tornado itself. Clara Blandick, born June 4, 1876, embodied the stern but loving Auntie M in The Wizard of Oz in 1939 at the age of 59, serving as the emotional tether that pulled Dorothy back from her dream. A prolific character actress, she earned approximately $750 per week, a standard rate for a supporting player that provided a decent living roughly equivalent to $16,000 a week in modern purchasing power, yet offered no long-term royalties or security, forcing her to work relentlessly in over 100 films just to stay afloat. Her life ended in one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking tragedies. By the 1960s, her health had catastrophically declined, leaving her in excruciating constant pain from severe arthritis and rapidly encroaching blindness that stripped away her independence and ability to read or work. Unwilling to become a burden or live in a body that had betrayed her, she meticulously arranged her room with her favorite photographs and memorabilia, dressed in an elegant gown, and took an overdose of sleeping pills before placing a plastic bag over her head to ensure the end. She died by suicide on April 15, 1962, in Hollywood at the age of 85. She was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, just a short distance from her on-screen husband, Charlie Grapewin. Fun fact, despite her severe on-screen demeanor, Blandick was known for her scene-stealing ability to convey deep worry with a single glance, a skill she honed on the Broadway stage before talkies even existed. From the tragic suicide of Auntie M now, to the technicolor polish of the Emerald City, a beauty who smoothed away the rough edges of the Depression. Dorothy Barrett, born February 3, 1917, radiated optimism as the Emerald City manicurist in The Wizard of Oz in 1939 at the age of 22, appearing in the Merry Old Land of Oz musical number to buff the Tin Man's rusted casing. While her smile was bright, her compensation was reflective of the cattle call nature of studio contract players. She earned a daily rate of approximately $25 per day, which, while seemingly decent with a purchasing power of roughly $500 in today's money, was inconsistent and relied on the physically exhausting hustle of securing daily bookings. This lack of a guaranteed salary meant she often faced weeks of financial drought, barely covering the rent in a Los Angeles that was rapidly becoming unaffordable for the working class. Her career as a dancer exacted a brutal toll on her musculoskeletal system. Years of performing high-impact choreography in unsupportive heels on concrete studio floors, masquerading as ballrooms, led to chronic debilitating arthritis in her knees and hips later in life. She suffered silently from the dancer's curse, microfractures in the metatarsals that never properly healed, causing lifelong foot pain that she masked with the same professional grace she displayed on screen. She died on March 8, 2018, in Studio City, California at the age of 101, from natural causes related to congestive heart failure. She was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. Fun fact: Barrett was one of the few surviving cast members who attended the lavish 50th anniversary celebrations of the film, where she tearfully recalled that the manicurist role was her favorite because it was the only time she felt she was truly part of a fairy tale. From the beautician's chair now to the witch's Air Force, a stuntman who defied gravity in a suit of nightmares. Buster Brody, born October 11, 1885, terrified the skies as a winged monkey in The Wizard of Oz in 1939. At the surprising age of 54, performing dangerous aerial stunts that men half his age would have refused. As a little person working in a niche market of Hollywood, his salary was often bundled into hazard pay, earning him roughly $100 per week, equivalent to about $2,000 today. Yet this compensation was woefully inadequate for the life-threatening nature of the work. The production utilized piano wires to fly the monkeys, and the harnesses were essentially torture devices. Brody was strapped into a leather rig that cut off circulation to his extremities, causing severe numbness and bruising around the ribs and groin that lasted for weeks. The physical trauma was compounded by the fact that the wires frequently snapped on set, dropping actors several feet onto the hard soundstage floor, leading to concussions and sprains that the studio doctors treated with basic aspirin so filming wouldn't be delayed. He lived a life of physical resilience, battling the chronic joint pain associated with his stature and the wear and tear of stunt work, eventually passing away on April 9, 1948, in Los Angeles at the age of 62 due to complications from cardiac arrest. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, California. Fun fact: Brody was known for his incredible versatility and actually appeared in over 200 films, often unrecognized under heavy prosthetics or in distance shots, making him one of the most prolific invisible actors of the Golden Age. From the Flying Terror now to the Village Elder, a leading man in a small world who fought for dignity against a dog's salary. Billy Curtis, born June 27, 1909, commanded respect as the Munchkin father in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, at the age of 28, standing out as one of the few little people on set with professional acting experience. Despite his prominent placement in the film, the financial reality for the Munchkins was a scandalous example of wage theft. Curtis and his peers were paid roughly $50 per week, and shockingly up to 50% of that was siphoned off by their manager, Leo Singer. This left Curtis taking home a pittance that had the purchasing power of just $500 a week today, less than half of what the dog Toto earned, $125 a week. A humiliating disparity that Curtis spent years speaking out against in an effort to unionize little people in the industry. His medical history was fraught with the complications of achondroplasia. He suffered from spinal stenosis, a narrowing of the spaces within the spine that causes constant pressure on the nerves, leading to severe back pain and leg weakness, that plagued him even as he performed stunts in westerns. He eventually died on November 9, 1988, in Dayton, Nevada, at the age of 79 from a massive heart attack, a common ailment for people with his condition due to the strain on the cardiovascular system. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, California. Fun fact, Billy Curtis had a career that spanned 5 decades, and he actively tried to move away from creature roles, famously playing a Clint Eastwood-style gunfighter hero in The Terror of Tinytown, proving that a leading man didn't need to be 6 feet tall. From the defiant Munchkin leader now to the trumpeting herald, a musician whose fanfare masked a life of financial exploitation. Karl Karchy Kosicki, born September 20, 1918, stepped into the spotlight as Munchkin Harold, number 1, and the Sleepyhead in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, at the age of 21, playing the trumpet that signaled Dorothy's arrival in Munchkinland. Like his peers, his financial compensation was a dark stain on the production. He was paid a meager $50 per week, but under the predatory contract of manager Leo Singer, up to half of his wages were garnished as commission, leaving him with a take-home pay of roughly $25 equivalent to about $550 today. This poverty wage forced many of the actors to sleep in crowded boarding houses, sharing beds in shifts, unable to afford the glamour of the city they were helping to mythologize. His life was physically dictated by the complications of achondroplasia, a genetic bone growth disorder that results in disproportionately short limbs and spinal curvature. The grueling 12-hour shooting days on the concrete floors of the soundstage exacerbated his chronic lumbar stenosis, causing nerve compression and severe leg pain that he had to endure while standing at attention for hours during the intricate musical numbers. He lived a quiet life away from Hollywood after the film eventually passing away on November 15, 2011, in Lorain, Ohio, at the age of 93 due to complications from a stroke. He was laid to rest at Calvary Cemetery in Lorain, Ohio. Fun fact, in the Sleepyhead scene, Kosicki is the Munchkin who is roused from the nest in the giant egg a moment that required him to curl his already pained spine into a tight ball for extended periods between takes. From the trumpeting herald now to the sweet-toothed greeter, the last survivor who handed over a candy that symbolized a century of cinema. Jerry Marin, born January 24, 1920, danced into immortality as the central member of the Lollipop Guild in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, at the youthful age of 19, handing Judy Garland the oversized confection that became an iconic prop. Despite his pivotal role in one of the film's most famous sequences, his salary was the standard $50 per week, roughly $100 in today's purchasing power, a paycheck famously smaller than the $125 earned by Terry the dog, who played Toto. This disparity highlighted the industry's view of the Munchkins as props rather than talent. Marin often spoke of how he couldn't even afford to buy a car, with his earnings relying on the studio bus to get to the lot. His longevity was miraculous given the medical odds. Individuals with his specific form of dwarfism often suffer from respiratory issues and spinal compression that shorten life expectancy, yet Marin remained active well into his 90s. However, his final years were clouded by the onset of dementia, a cruel fog that slowly eroded the memories of the Technicolor world he had inhabited, leaving him in a state of confusion, requiring 24-hour care at an assisted living facility. He died on May 24, 2018 in San Diego, at the incredible age of 98, from varying ailments related to advanced age and heart failure. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, California. Fun fact, Marin was the very last surviving cast member with a speaking or singing role in the film, and when he died, the direct living link to the creation of Oz was finally severed forever. Who's your favorite character from The Wizard of Oz? It's always tough to say goodbye to beloved cast members who are no longer with us. How does that make you feel? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you're enjoying our content, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. We appreciate having you in our community.